Welcome again, folks online, anyone who's joined us during the meditation. We're glad you're here. And I've been reflecting this week on stillness, and one of my mentors, teaching mentors, asked me what it is that I like to teach on most of all. And I knew the answer right away. I knew what to tell her. It's stillness. And when I say stillness, I'm really including several different flavors of stillness and calm that the Buddha taught about. The calm of passaddhi, the quieting of shamatha, the collectedness of samadhi or concentration, and the poise of equanimity or upekkha, which we talked about during the paramis. And all of these are just different names to me for the kind of stillness that we're talking about, that's calm, quiet, collected, poised, not dull or withdrawn, but still and also really, really alive. And it's this place of stillness that allows us to see as deeply and truly as we can into our lives, into understanding. It's really the place where wisdom and insight arise on the Buddha's path. And it's why I practice. When I go on retreats, when I meditate, it's to reconnect to my experience in quiet. And sometimes we say, it's so noisy or busy that I can't hear myself think. And then we sit for 20 or 30 minutes and it's like, oh, I can really hear myself think. And then sometimes after a while on the cushion, we drop into a place where there is sort of a hybrid of some movement happening, but also some stillness, some quiet that's available to us. Yes, thinking is happening, and there's something around the thinking. There's something listening, there's something knowing. And I led with that listening exercise because for me, the act of listening really invites stillness. It's sort of a bit of a shortcut for me. When I adopt that listening stance, when I really listen, I haven't made up my mind. I'm open to what is going to be revealed. I'm curious. There's less me in the moment, and there's more space to hear what's actually here, to know what's actually here. And this kind of stillness is really important on the path of practice, and it's also really important to just living in this time, in this culture, in this body. And there's a word, Samsara, that the Buddha used for this spinning world. Sometimes it's described as a wheel, the wheel of samsara. The spinning that the Buddha said kept us moving from life to life to life, never satisfied, never truly at ease. And I like to think of it as like the wheel that might have fallen off of a child's red wagon, and imagining that you could hold the wheel by the axis and start spinning it around. And when you start spinning it, you can imagine that if you're located out here on the edge of the wheel, there's a lot of movement happening. And the closer you get to the center, the smaller the circles are, the less movement there is. And then when you get to the very center, there's almost no movement. And if it's a fixed axle, I guess technically there's no movement. And that's the journey that we're really on, the journey from samsara to these wide spinning circles to stillness. That's the journey that the Buddha is inviting us to take. And this is an invitation that we can take moment by moment during our lives. And also the Buddha was inviting us to take this journey over lifetimes. And it's a journey that we can take every time we remember that even as there's all this motion out here on the edge of the spinning wheel, that there is at the same time this still point, this center that's available to us. All of the teachings of the Buddha lead from samsara to nibbana. I'm using the word nibbana, that's the Pali word. Nirvana is the Sanskrit word that most of us are familiar with. But bondage or entanglement and release and freedom. And these aren't physical locations, they are experiences. Samsara is that experience of being entangled, caught up in the endless pursuit of sensual pleasures or pushing away what we don't like and the self that we create around that sort of endless thirst. And then nibbana is the complete freedom from craving, complete freedom from aversion, the loosening of the self. And, you don't have to necessarily believe in rebirth and reincarnation to follow the Buddha's teachings, but it really was part of his teaching. And there's one sutta that I wanted to read. It's called Tears, and it describes this process of samsara. And he's talking to the monks and nuns, and he says, "Mendicants, this samsara has no known beginning. No first point is found of samsara, of sentient beings roaming and transmigrating from life to life, shrouded by ignorance and fettered by craving." And he says, "The flow of tears you've shed while roaming and transmigrating is indeed more than the water in the four oceans. For a long time you've undergone the death of a mother, a father, brother, sister, son, daughter, loss of relatives, loss of wealth, or loss through illness, from being coupled with the unloved and separated from the loved. The flow of tears you've shed while roaming and transmigrating is indeed more than the water in the four oceans. This samsara has no known beginning. This is enough for you to become disillusioned, dispassionate, and freed regarding all conditions." And although the Buddha said this has no known beginning, he did teach that it had an end, a resolution, a place of freedom, and that's nibbana. The Buddha's path is that journey from samsara to stillness and then eventually to the complete freedom of nibbana. And we live in a culture that encourages and supports this spinning, this samsara, this endless, unquenched wandering. The idea somehow that safety and peace and stillness can be bought or won or appropriated or trained, that somehow I can control the flow of the universe and arrange it just right and make it stay that way, and I'll be okay. And I hear some chuckles because we recognize maybe that doesn't work. And yet we don't always know where else to look because we're so immersed in the stream of the world around us. The Buddha said the world is led by craving. The foolish are swept away by that current, but the wise, seeing the danger, travel against the current and reach the far shore. So he's pointing out that the energy that surrounds us, that we live in every day, tends to carry us away from peace, toward restlessness rather than ease. And, there's the beautiful image of swimming against that stream, which seems like it would take an awful lot of energy. But I think it's also helpful to just think of maybe entering another stream, a stream that leads toward stillness, a stream that leads toward release, a stream that leads toward that far shore of nibbana. One more simile or image that the Buddha used to describe the human predicament is like being in a place where four huge mountains from the north, the east, the south, and the west are rolling toward you. And they represent aging, sickness, and death and loss. And he says that there's no hope there for victory over these forces by elephant troops, chariots, infantry, so worldly power. One can't defeat them by subterfuge. You can't trick our way out of this, or buy them off by means of wealth, although we sure see people trying to do that. Therefore, a person of wisdom here, out of regard for their own good, steadfast, should settle faith in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. In other words, the example of the Buddha, the teachings, and the community that keep those teachings alive. And when you think about it, communities of faith and practice like this, and like many spiritual communities, are resistance movements, because we are reminding ourselves that there is another stream, another way to swim, another response to this experience of samsara. And that response is supported, anchored in stillness, in love and in Sangha, the center that we've been talking about, the loving action that is supported from that center, and the community, our company along the path. So stillness doesn't mean that there is no movement. It just means there's no argument, not resisting what is, not resisting the movements of life. And there's the beautiful poem from T.S. Eliot. I'll just read part of it. The still point of the turning world, neither from nor towards, neither arrest nor movement, and do not call it fixity, except for the point, the still point, there would be no dance, and there is only the dance. And it sounds kind of ethereal, but the teaching is so important because it's about going beyond concepts and pairs of opposites to the center that is both moving and still, that has no argument with life because it includes everything and clings to nothing. The closer that we get to silent in our practice and our lives, the closer we get to life. Life simply being lived, life happening without the overlay of dualities and things that turn this into my life and my identity, something that I have to cling and defend. But simply here is the stillness that knows. Here is life. Here is life unfolding and happening in this moment. And that's the stance of deep listening, the stance of stillness that can help us see clearly all the way to the deepest insights. And when I forget that stillness, the center of the wheel, as I often do, when I forget that intention to listen, I lose my depth. I lose my gravity. I'm out on the spinning wheel, on the edge, turning, moving in all directions, and my mind scatters, looking for something to hold on to that actually is not something that can be clung to. And so the practice is coming back again and again to that still space, remembering it's not that everything out here on the spinning wheel is unreal or isn't happening, but that it doesn't tell the whole story. So the word that from the Buddhist time, sati, that got translated as mindfulness, also is translated as remembering to come back again and again and again. So I like to do walking meditation, and sometimes I'll go up in the hills near where I live and give myself the anchors of breath and movement. And sometimes that works for me, having sort of two anchors going alongside each other. And some days I might walk 20 or 30 feet and I'll recognize that my mind is totally wandered off. And I'm on some train of thought that usually has to do with what I want or what I don't want this particular day or this particular week or this particular lifetime. And I remember that practice, that I can come back to this center point, this axis. I can come back to breath and body. I can come back to life simply happening. And the more that I do that in practices like walking or sitting in the morning or taking a mindfulness break later in the day, the more I remember and I actually physically feel that the spinning wheel, the spinning energy in my body, mind, and heart does not tell the whole story, and that there is something else here. I remember that still point, the place of balance and listening. And so when we share this practice of stillness and listening and care, that is Sangha. That's what we are doing here together. And Sangha is not a fixed thing either. It's a process, and we really could say that we are Sangha-ing, practicing, belonging, learning, sharing. And for most of my life, I have not been a joiner. And Sangha has been the true exception to that for me. I've been part of Insight Community of the Desert since its inception in 2012. And we're now well into our 14th year, as I said before the meditation. And so I've seen it grow and change, and Sangha, since that time, since we had our first meeting in Larry Yang's home in North Palm Springs, Larry being our founding teacher. Then through our time meeting at the Center for Spiritual Living, where they were generous enough to offer us space. And then we had our own beautiful space on Tuckwitz, and we had lots of programs and meetings because we had a space to do that, and social events. And then we were online for years. And then just last October, so just a year and a month or two ago, we started to meet again regularly in person through the generosity of the Meisel Center. And I can think of all of the people involved over those years, volunteering, serving on the board, teaching, coming week after week, and keeping something very precious living and alive. And I mean that a Sangha is alive. It's not something that we can cling to either. There's no fixity in Sangha, just the constancy, the central axis of the Dharma as our guide, and the stillness that we create together in our practice. And you can really feel that stillness when you're in it. And then sometimes when you come into a room where there's been a lot of practice, you can feel that stillness. I'm beginning to feel it in this room when I come in. So when we look for spiritual home or refuge, we can sometimes chafe or bristle or get turned off by anything that seems less than perfect. And that makes total sense to me, because I'm bringing my heart, I'm bringing my vulnerable places, I'm bringing my wounds and my hopes to this place. And I'm bringing the deepest parts of myself here. And so, of course, we're careful, rightly so. And I can remember as I began studying Buddhism and going to Sanghas in Seattle, how I really wanted the person in the front of the room to be perfect, to be faultless, to hold the views that I thought were right and express them beautifully. And I wanted everybody in the room to be shining examples of what following this path would lead to for me. I wanted them to all be done, all enlightened, and help me along the way. Forgetting that the people in the room and the teachers in the front of the room and everybody involved is just like me. They are seeking, they are exploring, they are failing, and they are learning. And that intention to care for our hearts, which is really wise, can also become sort of rigid. Oh, that teacher eats meat. Or I've seen her get really mad before. Or is this Sangha, is this too lax or is this too tight? Is this Dharma light or is this Dharma deep enough for me? Is it too advanced or not advanced enough? And if this is a path worth following, why doesn't everyone involved always see eye to eye? Because we're Sangha-ing. The Sangha is a vehicle and a support for our practice. It's not the further shore itself. It's a place where we may rub up against each other from time to time. We may be challenged. We may need to say, ouch, or excuse me, or help. And we may need to respond as best we can from that still point to that ouch, to that request for help. And this is a big part of what has given me faith in this Sangha over time. When I started with ICD, I hadn't been trained to teach and I hadn't been invited to teach. And so I did communications, worked on the website, sent out mailers, filled lots of board roles, pretty much every single one of them. And, I got to see, as they say, how the sausage is made. And I got to see teachers and board members and volunteers and members have a lot of those ouch moments, those moments where they and I got triggered and reacted from out here on that spinning wheel. And what I noticed is that just like in the practice of coming back to breath and body, that they came back to center. Not always, but a lot. They saw that there was something more than the trigger, more than the spinning wheel. And even though they might be out here, they didn't forget. They remembered that still point. They remembered their intentions, their integrity, and they returned. And seeing that, witnessing that, year by year, people living their practice in community, even when it was really difficult, gave me a lot of faith. And over time, noticing in myself some growth in that area, that ability to remember the practice and come back, even when I'm triggered. So our Sangha is in a new phase, a new time, new people, and many people who've been here for years. And my hope is together that we'll create a lot of opportunities for the shared practice of listening and stillness and love. The stillness that we touch when we follow the Dharma, the love and compassion that we express when we share what's meaningful and true for us, just like the Buddha did, just like communities like this have done for 2,600 years. And there's also a beautiful generosity in being a Sangha. It's like we put out a little buoy or a flag or a light out into the community saying, this is here for you if you want it. This is here for you if you want it. We belong so that others may belong. And it's not just random that we start our Sunday and Tuesday meetings with a meditation period, or that we begin all of our organizational meetings, committee meetings, board meetings, teachers' meetings, with meditation. It's a practical invocation of stillness. It's inviting that listening stance. And why? Because stillness is the wellspring of clarity and loving action in every aspect of our lives. Spiritual, yes, but also social and familial and political. And this kind of stillness isn't just mine or yours or ours. And even though I like to use that image of the spinning wheel with stillness at the center, stillness is not localized. It's actually everywhere. And it's something that we can share. It is ours. It's the source that truly listens and the source of love that doesn't flee. And when you think about the most powerful social movements and protests, like the civil rights movement in the US, the march from Selma to Montgomery, the lunch counter sit-ins, Gandhi's nonviolent response to a colonized India, the monks in Burma walking silently across the land to express their stillness in the face of the junta. And here, this year, if you've participated in any of the actions protesting the treatment of immigrants or economic injustice or any of it, what is powerful is not so much what people say, it's what they do. The simple showing up, the strength of people simply willing to stand together. Because what shakes the world isn't volume, it's that clarity and love that are supported by the practice of stillness. The forces that seek to dominate and control are loud, and they rely on bluster and violence and divisiveness, and stillness does not need to shout. There's a passage in the Buddha's teaching that I love very much. I'm trying to memorize it, but I don't have it down. Know this from the ways rivers move in clefts and crevices. Those in small channels flow noisily, while silent flow the great rivers. Whatever is not full makes noise. Whatever is full is quiet. And we see that too in the way that we express love to others, to friends, dear ones, to communities, even to ourselves. Stillness is the source of love that is full and quiet and doesn't flee. So just think about a time in your life when you felt really loved. And I'm not talking so much about romantic love, but someone who was there for you when you were in pain or need, and they were really there for you deeply. Or if that doesn't come to mind, thinking of a time when you might have been able to be there for someone, to offer loving care to someone in great need or pain. And then just reflecting, what was the tone of that connection? Was it like the noisy brook, or was it like that still deep river? And if it was deep, what was the source of that stillness for you? So Henri Nouwen, a Dutch priest and social activist, wrote this: when we ask ourselves which person or people in our lives mean the most to us, we often find that it is those who, instead of giving advice, solutions, or cures, have chosen rather to share our pain and touch our wounds with a warm and tender hand. The friend who can be silent with us in a moment of despair or confusion, who can stay with us in an hour of grief and bereavement, who can tolerate not knowing, not curing, not healing, and face with us the reality of the situation. That is a friend who cares. That's the love that emanates from stillness. That's the quality of attention that isn't spinning, that isn't rushing, that isn't fixing, that isn't arguing with life. So the kind of stillness we're talking about isn't an escape from the world. It's at the center of the wheel. Love is the movement that emanates from stillness. And Sangha is how we remember together to come back to that center, that it's even possible to do that. Belonging so that others may belong. So I want to invite you this week to just notice sometimes that image of the spinning wheel. Notice where you are on that wheel. And to experiment with coming back to center, recognizing that the center is still there even while the wheel is spinning. Not to escape what's happening, but to see what kind of response becomes available to you when you remember that stillness, your stillness. And maybe noticing how that stillness supports love. And then how love knows how to move. Okay, so let's just take a moment to let the words settle, coming back to this place of stillness within ourselves. Okay, so let's take a few moments for reflections, sharing reflections or questions, what you might have noticed that, or what stayed with you, and maybe whatever you're sitting with or what this might have brought up for you. And just a couple of things to announce. We do have our residential retreat coming up in March 25th through 29th. Registration is open, it's beginning to fill. Would love to have you there. Check your email to see more about the details, and or talk to me or any of the teachers or board members. And and of course we're all volunteer powered and Dana supported, so please give in any way that you can, and know that it's appreciated and needed. And then let's offer the dedication of merit together, and I will put this on the screen for folks online. Got it queued up, just need to do that. There we go. So just offering this as our sharing of our practice. Going forth into this world so in need of light, may I bring all the kindness and wisdom I embody to each being and each situation that I meet. May the power of my practice today strengthen my resolve to be an agent of peace and justice in this world. Going forth together into this world so in need of light, may we together bring all the kindness and wisdom we embody to each being and each situation that we meet. May the power of our practice today strengthen our resolve to be agents of peace and justice in this world. We dedicate our practice for the liberation of all beings, the great, the small, the wise, the ignorant, the powerful and the powerless. May all beings be liberated from sorrow and loss, hatred and injustice, scarcity and want, and every form of suffering. May our practice today be a prayer for peace, and may it benefit all beings without exception. Thanks, everyone. And I know someone brought some baked goods and put them on the table by the Donna basket. Who brought them? Mimi. Oh, Mimi. Right. Thanks so much. So please enjoy. They look lovely. And feel free to stick around for a while. There is no rush. Okay. Thanks, online folks. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for dealing with the technological ups and downs. Okay.